Saturday morning, May 31st. A hearty group here of walkers has assembled at the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power Reservoir here in the Sepulveda Pass near Rexford Street.
Good morning. It's great to have everybody here today. Just to tell you where we're at, give you a little brief background. So we're at the Van Norman Reservoir Complex, and a lot of folks who lived in LA a long time remember the Van Norman Reservoir until the 1971 earthquake. And so now the new reservoir is called the Los Angeles Reservoir. This is the headwaters of the LA water system. So this location goes back to when the aqueduct opened in 1913. Some of you may have been at the 100th anniversary a year ago. And so this is where the aqueduct water first came into the city. We had two large reservoirs, and from here it got distributed basically to most of Los Angeles. And that's still the way our system works for the most part today. About almost 80% of the water that we serve goes through this complex. So it's still the headwaters of the water system. We have about 1,400 acres of land here. It's a very big property. It actually goes to Lakeside Debris Basin. So you'd have to go back before there was a 5 freeway, actually before there were any freeways anywhere, probably before many cars existed. So that was all contiguous with this property. At Lakeside Debris Basin, goes all the way down to Rinaldi. It goes against the homes in the Knollwood area here, and then almost to the freeway and on this side over here. So it's a large property, and it's of tremendous importance to us. And so because of that, we have a number of different things that are going on here. We both have water coming in from the aqueduct. Then we have our filter plant that was opened in 1986 that treats the water right about a half mile above our filter plant. Metropolitan Water District has a filter plant that takes water out of Castaic Lake, and we buy water from them treated. We also, back in the late 80s, built a connection to buy water from them untreated so we can save you money on your water bills. We treat our water at about 10% of the cost of what they charge us for treated water. So we buy untreated water, treat it ourselves, and you save the difference. Literally directly you save it on your water bills. And so we take that water, we treat that. We have water in storage. We have a series of major pipelines. The pipeline out of LA Reservoir right here is 120-inch diameter. It's a 10-foot diameter pipe leaving this reservoir here. We have an 8-foot and 9-foot diameter pipes on the far side going around the reservoir. And all these lead down into the system that then goes across the valley floor by gravity. So water is mostly fed out of this facility by gravity all the way across the valley floor into the Santa Monica Mountains and into the main part of the city. And then we have a large pump station we'll see as we go by. Probably one of the largest potable water pump stations in the world. 2 stories above ground, 3 stories underground, and that boosts water to all the surrounding hillside around that rim of the valley. So there's a lot of important things. And then we have our new treatment facility that we're going to see today. We just opened up, and we'll talk about the water quality improvements, why there's black floating balls on the reservoir, millions and millions of them, and we'll get to help cover the reservoir ourselves later in the day. But this is really the hub and the heart of the water system. So this is where most of it happens. And so it's a very important facility to us, and you've seen it, if you live around here, you've seen it change over time as we've adapted to new regulations and changes that are put on us. But it's a great place. It's got a lot of history, and mixed in with the new things are old things. See remnants going back to the old reservoir, remnants going back to the 1971 earthquake, things like that. A lot happening here. We even have police department and fire department have facilities on the property, so we try to make the most of it. So hope you enjoy the tour today. We're here to answer lots of questions. There's a number of water and power employees. The water system guys, raise your hands. Okay, so we're kind of dispersed that around, kind of incognito. But if you see anybody with the bags, or it looks like they know where they're going, feel free to ask anybody questions. And we want to have you get the most out of the tour. The water from here comes out of Castaic Lake or out of the Eastern Sierra. So that's where our sources are for here.
Your unofficial tour host today. Who's excited to be here?
Oh,
all right.
Solid.
Very good. Who was here on our last walk? Anybody? Okay, one guy snuck through because we take you through the inn and mysteriously people leave because it's all top secret. Nobody's going to tell anybody about this, right? All right, you are going to see some things that really is really off the beaten path and really not available to the general public. We do have some tours, but nothing like this. So it's really special what you're going to see today. We are going to see our new Pankaj Parekh UV treatment plant today. You are the first general public tour that will go through the plant. It was just dedicated on Thursday, so it's special for you and for us to have you here today for that. We will be walking around the entire reservoir. It'll take about a half a mile to get to the ultraviolet plant, and then it's 2 miles around the reservoir, and then another half a mile or so back here. So it's a full day. We do have a restroom at the UV plant, and we have one about halfway a mile into the hike. We also have water about halfway if you want to fill up at that point. If you don't feel that you can make it all the way around, we do have some of our security officers in some sedans that can drive you back to your car here, so don't feel like you have to make it all the way around. So we've got, I know Steve Cole back there. Steve, I'm going to have you lead everyone over to the UV plant. When we get to the UV plant, Steve, take them to the main, Steve, take them to the main entrance in the shade. We're going to do a briefing there. We have some of the gentlemen that helped design and plan for that plant. It's going to give you an overall explanation of what happens in that plant, and then we're going to walk you in the plant, and then once you're inside you can ask all the questions you want about anything particular that we didn't cover. From there, we're going to walk around the west side of the reservoir and point out some facilities, talk about our shade balls. As Marcy said, we're going to see a drop of 45,000 shade balls all at once to go with the nearly 55 million balls that are in there now. And we have a special treat for you at that point that I'll leave as a tease at this point, and then we'll continue our walk around. I'll take one question right now.
Are pictures okay?
Yes, but we'll have to take your phone and your camera.
Okay.
And at that time, we had a conceptual level estimate, which, frankly, that estimate is actually $62 million. In this talking points, we quoted $60 million. A conceptual level estimate, that can run anywhere from an accuracy level of minus 50% to plus 100%, because we do not have the design yet to be able to actually get into all the details of figuring out materials and just what exactly we were constructing. We were in construction, and then we finally got some of the criteria that we're going to have to meet, including the seismic design for this site. This is a high potential risk for seismic activity, and that made a huge difference in this plant. We did not completely do the design and understand what the scope of that was going to be until 6 months to a year later. We had people out here at the initial estimate given $4 million to do earthwork. 6 months later, that estimate had to go up to $6 million. So you had a 50% increase just in the earthwork. Also, with the seismic criteria, things like just the foundation slab increased. So you had things like that went on. One of the other big things was we made a conscious decision at the department that we wanted all the water treated by the filtration plant, all 600 million gallons, to go through the UV process before it goes either directly to a customer or if we're going to put it into LA Reservoir, which meant we had to add some pipeline and everything to do this. So our trunk line estimate initially, as part of that $62 million, was $2 million. By adding these other facilities to it, that went up by almost $9 million. So we had those significant types of increases between decisions to make sure we gave you the highest quality water, as well as the seismic practices. We have 14 pipelines run across the Rosamond Valley. Those pipelines are what we call the reactor lines. And when you see it, it's going to be a silver-colored vessel in the middle of the pipeline. That is the UV reactor itself. The UV reactor has 5 lamps in it. Each lamp is 20 kilowatts. And we have an example up on one of the displays. We can actually see one of the lamps inside a plastic tube. And you can fire that lamp up, and it's mercury, this is also violet light, which is a very intense part of the spectrum of natural light that you can't see this high, but it is enough to inactivate the birds and dragons and the hikers, and you don't want to be drinking water. We have 14 legs, 12 of them are duty legs, so that when we're running at full capacity, you have 50 million gallons per day running each of those 12.
You have to give a huge noise in the background.
And then you have two which are backup legs. In case one's down for service. You'll also see, and the thing that's producing the most noise is some gray cabinets that we're going to walk past. Those are control cabinets. They have electrical equipment in them. In many ways, they are major, large dimmer switches. We can be efficient with our energy by monitoring just how clear the water is, how well the UV light passes into it, and then this will ramp up and down both the intensity in the lamp from 40% power to 100% power, as well as while we have 5 lamps in it, when our water quality is high, we may only operate with 2 of the lamps on. But in that fraction of a second, the water passes through the UV, you get the disinfection. Besides that, one of the other key points is one way that we're also keeping down on future operational costs. This will be an unmanned facility. The controls and everything from here are all wired into the control room of the main filtration plant. We'll have guys that come down, walk through, and check things, but we don't have to man this place.
So that's about 220 acre-feet of water. They got enough water for almost 500 families right there. That's just in 1 month and 1 year. So this will cut that evaporation significantly. And so between the evaporation savings, chemical savings, and other things, about half the cost of these balls will be paid for by other savings.
Now the reservoir is not yet covered. It won't be covered until about November or so. We receive 3 shipments a day, 45,000 balls per shipment, 7 days a week. We're going to view a drop of that today a little bit as we get around the reservoir here. Who can guess how many balls it takes to cover LA Reservoir?
77 million.
How many do you think?
77 million.
How many?
77 million.
Very good. You cheated. 77 million. But how many balls are on there right now?
55.
Wow, somebody cheated again. 55 million, 10,000 balls are in there right now. We're going to add another 45,000 this morning. The balls are BPA free. They are weighted with water to hold it down. This is a nice day today, but often they'll get very windy. You'll see the balls are even stacking on top of each other as well, so that helps the balls keep down and not stack so much. The cost of the balls are 31 cents each, so you can do the math on how much it is. It's $20-some-odd million to cover them all. So is there anything in the plastic going in the water? The balls generally keep their integrity. They will only last about 10 years and we'll have to replace them. We often get the question, why are they black? They're black because they have a compound called carbon black in them that provides as a UV protection against sunlight degradation.
But that material is the same thing as a 1-gallon milk jug.
How deep is this?
So the reservoir itself, statistics on the reservoir holds 3.1 billion gallons of water. The reservoir, the surface area is 177 acres. At its deepest point, it's 90 feet. And that's all this, and the dam here was built in 1977 after the 71 earthquake.
Are the balls from the United States?
The balls are built here locally, just in East LA, east of LA, yeah.
How come the reservoir is not full?
So this water can stay here depending on how quickly we take out a number of weeks. All right. So let's move on. It's made by the combination of chlorine but with ammonia. So in that plant behind me, there is both of those chemicals in there. We form our own chloramine here on site, and then we inject that into the water. The benefits of chloramine, number one, is they don't develop those disinfection byproducts that are harmful and toxic to you. It is a longer lasting disinfectant. So when we put it in the distribution system, it lasts all the way through our entire distribution system. There's not much need to add additional chloramines into the system. And then other cities in America and around the country, customers that drink chlorinated water, some will say that it tastes better as well. You can kind of be the judge of that. We have been using chloramines in our system for decades now in San Pedro, in East Los Angeles, so it's not necessarily anything new. Most of Southern California is on chloramines, and many of the cities to the United States, so it's not necessarily new to the world of water, but to the world of drinking water in Los Angeles, it's new for us. So it's a different process for us to do that. Water quality is important to us. Just some facts and figures. You know, we do 25,000 different samples of water throughout our system every year, and we take about 200,000 different tests searching for 200 different contaminants that are potentially in the water system. And that's happening every day, 7 days a week. We have guys out taking samples and doing tests in our own laboratories. Just making sure that the water is protected and all of these safeguards that we put in are actually being effective. Marty talked about that most of the water here goes by gravity throughout the rest of the city, and somebody asked me a question, is the water here been able to drink elsewhere in the city? About 75% of the city it drinks water that comes through this whole complex, either out of this reservoir or directly out of the plants. That water that doesn't go directly by gravity gets pumped up. So I live over in Sunland, Tahunga, Lake Shadow Hills area. My water gets pumped from this area because I'm up a little bit higher, as well as the whole rim around the north part of the valley, all the way over to West Hills and beyond. Okay. The way we get that there is through that gray building behind, which is our Van Norman pumping station number 2. And Marty kind of gave you the specs on that, but that's one of our most critical pump stations. It's lifting the water up to tanks and reservoirs that then serve water around the rim of the north part of the valley. Okay, so very important facility for us. The entrance of water into Los Angeles 100 years ago last November. We had a big celebration there. Hopefully some of you were able to go by and see that. But the water entered in there, and as Marty said, this used to be called San Fernando Dam and San Fernando Reservoir, and this is the same location where that water entered. Marty,
real quick, some folks had a question about water pressure, you know, especially if you live right below the dam. So just, you know, the way it works at your house is that whatever's feeding you is probably at least 100 feet higher than. And our system's divided up into a couple hundred different service zones. And the service zones are either fed by a reservoir or a tank or a pressure regulating station. And so there's always some elevation difference. But we always try to give our customers at least 35 to 40 psi in the street. At the worst case, some people, one man said, I get a couple hundred pounds of pressure in the street. And so it varies based on the difference in elevation. So customers from this reservoir actually start a little, maybe about a half mile or so down in the valley. And then the people around this reservoir get fed by tanks higher up. So it's always interesting that when you look at the reservoir, the customers that look at the reservoir don't drink that reservoir by gravity. It's everybody below there, and the whole system's built like that. So pressures do vary. We have, you know, a certain amount of minimum pressure we provide everybody, and then if you have a home regulator at your house, then those are people that we have a higher pressure, and they have to regulate it down to make sure it doesn't blow up your house. So it does vary, but the whole system is staged.
Right here. I took one. That's a moving phone.
Everybody doing okay?
Let's see if I can do it. It's not going to hit the other side. Yeah, it's not.
John will be in touch, okay? Before we built this reservoir, the old reservoir was called Van Norman Reservoir, and as we go across the dam, you can see the old dam. It's been shaved down. It kind of goes by the Odyssey and across. The old reservoir was about 2.5 times the size of this. It was very, very big. And when they built that dam, it was something they called hydraulic sluicing, and the way they brought in material as like a slush, and then they let it settle out. And this is, you're talking back in that was in the teens, and then a lot of dams were built in the 20s, and that's how they built dams, and they didn't do a lot of compaction. And so we've learned that that doesn't work in an earthquake zone. And so before the 71 earthquake, we knew that dam had to be fixed, and so we built this reservoir called the bypass reservoir. And if you ever went to college and lived in a temporary dorm that was built 40 years before you got there, right? There's no such thing as temporary. So the bypass reservoir was actually finished and put in service in 1970, the year before the earthquake, knowing the other dam had to be fixed. And then, of course, in the earthquake, it proved that it needed to be fixed. And so after that, we built that. But because of bypass reservoir, we were able to keep the whole system running and moving after the 71 earthquake. And so we were fortunate in the timing. But it's a short, shallow reservoir, about 30 feet deep, and it actually works in concert with LA Reservoir. They have a different high water level, so we valve the water down below so that it mixes different ways. And it's about 30 feet deep, and it's basically got a series of columns that are holding up this aluminum roof. It didn't originally have a roof, but we put one on there back in the probably late 80s to protect the water quality. Shortly, they're talking about maybe putting some solar panels on that roof as part of our solar program. And so that would give us some nice green power to add to the system. And so, but this is basically in parallel to the reservoir here, and it's what we lived off of for about 4 or 5 years while this reservoir got built. And so, and then when we walk around the corner, you'll be able to see into the old basin of the old reservoir. That's now become kind of a utility yard. There's a police training academy. Our helicopter barn is over here. There's a bunch of connexes where the fire department does their smoke out training. And so we've used the old reservoir bottom. And then there's also a little pond down there that is going to become part of an increasing stormwater capture effort to get water from that pond into spreading grounds to make sure that we can recharge the local aquifer. It's kind of hard to imagine that this is a canyon, but you figure all the water around us here collects in this area and wants to go down toward Granada Hills. And so it's the dam here, and it was originally the dam further down that dammed up this canyon. And so we're looking at a part of the construction on the hillsides over here where there's been cuts is to deal with stormwater flow and reroute all that stormwater flow to make sure it goes around these reservoirs. Now we have to model for a 1,000-year storm. So we have to make sure we can handle all the stormwater flow, and then we want to direct that stormwater flow into the groundwater basin so we can have a more local water supply. And we have rights not near as much in the central basin and a little tiny bit in the west basin. We just got permission to store more water in that and to make our rights last longer. But the rights there are maybe about 15% of what we have in the San Fernando Valley. So we have a lot more players that have a lot more rights there. Every drop of water that falls in the San Fernando Valley or tributary to the San Fernando Valley by law belongs to the city of LA. And then there's other cities that have some rights based on, they have called return flows they get credit for, and there's a couple hundred ranches that go back to Spanish king granted rights. But other than that, all the water in the valley belongs to LA. And so as opposed to the other basin that's big, where there's a lot of players, here we're the big player.
So when it rains, you know, the DEP owns the rain. So when it rains,
it hits the ground. So, normally the normal high is 5 feet below the spillway, and then the normal low is about 30 feet below that. So there's a range of about 30 feet that this would typically operate under. That it could go lower and still provide water, and then it could also go higher when you need it to. But normally it's, elevation above sea level, this operates between 1,140 feet and 1,170 feet above sea level would be the normal range for this.
Okay, so we've got one more stop we're going to make as a group.
That's the dam over there. You see that?
So where was the crack?
I don't. You know, they cut the crack down, and I don't know.
So at least I know if I can't tell him, I can tell him where to go to. Those trees that were on here, they weren't here in 1970s then. Yeah. Water came out.
This is where the water from the reservoir here leaves and goes into the LA water system.
So they have training classrooms, they have a shooting range there, they have a closed course racetrack that they train their officers on. It's on our property, so it's a combination of helping our brothers and sisters in the city and LAPD at that facility. I like to tell people, I told somebody, so we often lease our property to other city departments, and we lease that for, I think, $1 into perpetuity. We have yet to see the dollar. It's usually how those deals go. You see some kind of rust-colored metal containers way off just this side of the dam. That's the Dupee fire training facility. Firefighter Dupee was one of their firefighters who was killed in action. So they named that facility after them. So they do some smoke training. What other kind of training they do?
And flashover.
Flashover training. So again, that's another use there. There's also a green waste recycling facility where we see that from here.
It's on the hill now, yeah. It's up on the hill.
Okay,
way
up
back
on
there.
the hill. So that's another way we use this property. So the city's green waste is kind of a transfer facility here. We use that green waste a lot to keep down weeds and things on our property, as does the rest of the city. A little bit closer then, the square metal building there, that is our hangar for the DWP Air Force. Okay, we have a number of helicopters. We primarily use those for security patrols. So we patrol the city regularly every day, all the water facilities, tanks, reservoirs, towers within the city here for any kind of illegal activity that's going on. We have a lot of theft that happens, stealing copper. We want to make sure we really haven't had any obviously any terrorist incidents or any vandalism really into the water yet, but that's because we monitor those regularly. We also do monitoring all the way up and down our aqueduct and along our transmission towers as well. They're also used in construction projects. I've used them just in my work at Water and Power to raise and lower pumps within reservoirs, drilling rigs on the side of mountains to take samples. They use in the power system to help them fabricate and repair their towers if they're damaged or if they're constructing new towers. So we do that very efficiently and at a cheaper cost if we have that inside the city. So that's their hangar there. The clearing below us in between that and that building, that's going to be where the second ultraviolet plant is going to be. So that's going to treat all the water that comes out of the reservoir behind you. Okay. Right now, the health department is allowing, just with the shade balls for a number of years. I think we have until 2018 to have that facility done. I think they're going to break ground. I think actually the design is 90% design, so probably within a year they're going to be breaking ground on that project. That project will be, that was a 60 million gallon a day plant. This is going to be a 100 million gallon per day plant out here, just so when you have those peak flows and if there's any issues elsewhere in the city that doesn't allow us to serve the peak amount of water, we can just open all the gates and get as much water out of this reservoir in an emergency situation and make sure it's treated as well. So that plant will be built on there. Off to that direction there, you can see a whole bunch of pipe in a yard. That's because that's our pipe yard. Okay. So we keep there we remove some pipes for some obsolete facilities, and that pipe's expensive, and it otherwise may not be may otherwise be able to be used. So we actually store some old pipe there. When we buy new pipe, it's a great place to store pipe there, so it's a yard where we can get for a project. We also store old valves that we can repair and replace at a cheaper cost than buying them new. So that's our pipe yard. A boneyard is, you might hear it called that as well. And mostly comes along the west side there, and it flows into this debris basin. Basically where the old outlet tower was for this dam, that is converted in, and from there it goes into the stormwater system. The spillway, somebody asked the question, how high can the reservoir go? It can go as high until it hits the spillway behind us, which is the light-colored concrete. When that spills over, that would flow into this as well and go in the storm drain system. And then we also capture water to the east here. The San Fernando Reservoir used to go across the 5 freeway.
This is the spillway that we're looking at here. If the water was ever to come up and go over the top, it would flow over the spillway.